creation and content translation, and monolingual ontologies. We combine the world of language with the world of knowledge into one. So for whom is this meant? It's primarily for multilingual knowledge workers, so people who create and maintain companies or organizations' knowledge. And it can be used, of course, in content creation, translation, but it supports many other business processes like search, text mining, AI, classification, and so on. So that's basically what Coreon is doing. Next. And so what is the customer benefits? What markets are we addressing? We're addressing roughly 3 sectors. So one sector is e-commerce, where a multilingual knowledge system enables customers to find products, which of course is key for e-commerce and drives revenue. For enterprises, particularly what we have a lot in the German or DACH space, global champions. So this typical company being a world market leader in a specific niche, making a couple billions, but having to serve a global market in many languages, which is very tough and costly. So multilingual knowledge helps to optimize global business process and results then in savings. And then, of course, for the public sector, where multilingual knowledge systems enable organizations and institutions to work together cross-border, cross-language, and achieve interoperability. So there the prime benefit is easier information exchange, more efficient public administration. Next. So I'm very happy that we got to do this project on the ELG, because I was already advocating for many years that Europe needs something like this. I called it at that time the European Language Cloud or LTI Cloud, because due to our many languages, the market is quite fragmented. And if you want to build an application which supports many languages, you end up having to use a lot of different packages which target different platforms, which have different licensing contracts and so on, which makes it very hard. So that even the bigger companies or standard databases very often only support the main languages, and the long tail, if at all supported, is supported in an inferior way. So I was advocating over quite a time that we need some sort of an infrastructure which makes it easier to access that technology. And of course, at the base, there are language resources and basic NLP capabilities. Then a very important component is, of course, automated translation. And next. And then, of course, multilingual knowledge, because without multilingual knowledge, it becomes very hard to interoperate, to get the domain knowledge into such infrastructure. And in the end, it enables then companies, institutions, and SMEs to build the applications to serve the market. So we had some sort of a prototype, also in form of a EU project, MLI it was called, presented, and I'm very happy to see that the ELG puts this all then into another level, and with that we see an evolution of this platform, which I think is very required. Next. So back to our project. So what was the problem? So knowledge graphs are typically queried and expressed through RDF and in triplets and queried through Sparkle, but they're not really designed for multilingual and rich described terminology. So most of these knowledge graphs are monolingual and focus more on the knowledge as such, but not so much on the labels which are describing the knowledge. Term bases, in return, they do have the labels, and often in many languages, but they have properties, APIs, including ours. Or there is a standard for exchanging terminology data, which is TBX. But of course, it's very cumbersome to do this via export. So term bases are not really prepared for the semantic web. And if at all, you would have to go through export importing, which is very tedious. That is the problem we wanted to solve. Next. And yeah, it results in a lost opportunity to leverage terminology data for semantic solutions. Next. So what is the solution? The solution was the ELG project we proposed. So multilingual knowledge systems as linguistic linked open data. Linguistic linked open data is already a topic in other projects. And so what we wanted to achieve is that instead of using our proprietary API, that's used by other companies, that we complement a multilingual knowledge system with a standard which is known from linguistic link open data. Next. And enable companies and institutions to make their multilingual knowledge systems, so their interoperability assets, discoverable and available through the ELG. So not only that we have a standard way of accessing it, but also a standard way of finding it and getting access to it through the ELG. Next. So what did we have to do? Well, obviously, we had to complement Coreon with a Sparkle endpoint, which meant for us that we had to remodel data, find the right package to store the data, and then make it available. And one trick with Sparkle endpoints are extremely powerful, but they are also very, very open. So for many companies, of course, this is a bit too much openness. So what we had to do is also to complement it with some sort of an access mechanism, some sort of an authentication mechanism, so that we have the openness, but also some control about the access of the data. Next. And of course, the goal was that ELG would be a gateway to the Sparkle endpoint and become platform for the what we call the multilingual semantic web. So have a way of accessing terminology in a standardized way through the ELG being a gateway. Next. So yeah, so the core innovation or the core task was to complement Coreon with a Sparkle endpoint. Okay, next. So little chart building blocks. So what we had to do is we had to add and complement Coreon with a triple store, and then of course with the endpoint to make it accessible. So a whole new component had to be added to our building blocks. Of course, we had also to find a way how to express the data, how to model the data in RDF so that it becomes meaningful and easy to query. So these are the building blocks. Coreon is a software as a service application. So of course, also important that all these things run smoothly or can be smoothly accessed over typical protocols. So the activities we had to do and which we were proposing were the following. Next. So first we had to see how we can map Coreon to RDF. So map the JSON data model to RDF. And we did this with an early to RDF export, and there we already got very good help from our, let's say, people who are taking care of our project officers. Next. And then we had to select a Sparkle engine and deploy it in the Coreon cloud, so software as a service solution, and map the data so that there's a real-time one-to-one relationship between the data and make it queryable. Next. We had to provide an easy access. So we needed some sort of an API key-based authentication, because typically the authentication was before done as it's typically done during logon. But here there's, of course, a different access, and also have a finer granular access management for organizations who only want to access or have certain parts of their data accessible. Next. And then, of course, we had to develop the ELG proxy that there's an interface between the selected repositories, which we make available over the ELG. And of course, we had to enrich the ELG metadata model and the corresponding handler. So these were the activities we had to carry out. Next. And so what was the result? I think we resolved the dilemma I described before and achieved the objectives. So Coreon can now be queried using a Sparkle interface. Next. And of course, the whole thing works nicely within the ELG. So on the ELG, the Coreon Sparkle endpoint can be accessed and people can play with it and see how, for the semantic web, how you now can access multilingual data. Next. So what were the main achievements? Well, first of all, Now the semantic web crowd can query terminology with the syntax known from the semantic web, i.e. Sparkle. It's real time, so there's no need to export, mirror data, or whatever. It's always there, in real time. The same data you have in Coreon in the triple store. It's findable, so it's promoted and shown on the ELG hub. And it's shared, so the results of the work we have done, primarily the mapping of TBX to RDF, we have fed into an ISO technical recommendation, because already for years the terminology crowd is struggling with how to get knowledge into terminology and express it. And so one of the results of this project was also ISO technical recommendation, how terminology TBX can be expressed using RDF triples and thus queryable through the standard Sparkle interface. So I think we were quite happy about the results and the outcome. When we started the project, we were still a bit unsure how well this all works, how well we can map the data, how well it fits into our stack. I mean, it was a complex project where many components had to play together, but it nicely turned out, and all the pieces fit together. Next. So our ELG experience. You see it already with the clapping hands. We were very happy with the ELG project for several reasons. I think, first of all, it was very well designed. The duration, the budget, the funding, and the fact that you could apply as a single company. I mean, all these parameters were very, I think, very pragmatic and made it very easy to participate and to achieve project goals. The process, it was not only well designed, it was also well lived. The process was very efficient. So the application process was well structured, it was pragmatic, it focused on the essentials, so it was very light. Who has ever applied for other EU projects knows that it's kind of a nightmare, and also a specific skill to even write it in a way that you somehow are admissible. Whereas here in the ELG, it was like down to earth, very simple, everybody could do it, no fluffy stuff. So well structured, pragmatic, and still the outcome was a very flexible and draft project plan. So it had the right level of detail, but not too much. Then the process was fast and transparent, so you didn't have to wait forever. That was great. The people who were our coaches, so to say, our project officers, they were very competent and knowledgeable, and they really helped us in solving problems, providing guidance. So they were true coaches, what they really should be. So we were very happy about that. And then typically reporting and acceptance at the end is let's say, not so chilling or not so great process. But here it was fun. Actually, the reporting on the project results, this was a fun sharing and learning event. We learned also quite some bit about it. We got useful feedback, and in the end there were also no delays in acceptance. So all in all, I have to say that our ELG experience, different from any other EU projects, was really, really positive. I couldn't really add something negative here. Next. But it was not only the experience, also the benefits for us. So next. Well, first of all, we're getting exposure on the ELG. So it's another channel to market our products. Next. We now have a standardized access to our repositories. Next. This makes it attractive for new markets. So if you want to get into the semantic web crowd without a Sparkle interface, well, you're nowhere, right? So it opens up a whole new market for us. Next. We learned a lot. So we had a true knowledge gain in that process. So I think it increased next the capabilities of our company, of our team, of our understanding, our capabilities to participate in future projects and to sell our product. Next. And it enlarged dramatically our option space. So the space where we can apply our product to and fulfill customer needs, but also the future evolution. Software is today very, very short-lived, and you never know really in which direction things will move, in which direction the market will move, in which direction your customers will move you. Our option space has become much bigger. Next. So what were the benefits for ELG? I mean, it's great that we had these benefits, but I think there were also benefits, and that's the way it should be. It should be mutually successful. But I think there were also benefits for the ELG. Well, first of all, it's of course good to have a successful project which kind of runs exactly as predicted and delivers on the main points. So that's also good for the ELG, obviously, and something nice to feature on the platform. Next. Well, I think we are one of the few industry projects. So I think it's shown that ELG is great for industry collaboration, and that very successfully industry can work with an organization like the ELG. Next. Well, it's a pilot for linguistic linked open data, which I think has already been used or featured in a few projects. I think it will become a very, very important feature. And here we have a pilot, which I think can reference to and can be used in many other contexts. Next. We have created an infrastructure for multilingual knowledge. And if you recall the chart I've shown in the beginning, I think as important as there are language resources, NLP capabilities, I think the other building block is domain-specific knowledge. And without this knowledge, interoperability and many other applications simply wouldn't work. Many organizations do have multilingual knowledge, and here we now have an infrastructure for maintaining and sharing multilingual knowledge, which is great. And next. And I think it's a showcase for language support for the big topic in the next EU program. Data spaces will be multilingual. Data spaces will, of course, have domain-specific knowledge. So we are bringing this together. Here we have a showcase for language support for data spaces, which I think is great for positioning the ELG in the future as a core support infrastructure for data spaces and the projects which are related around it. Thank you.
So thank you, Jochen, for these very comprehensive words and for these kind and nice words also towards the ELG. And you've mentioned, even in your presentation, several of the points that were brought up before, the link to knowledge graphs, for example, the link to different communities, because language technologies actually this is a field with lots of different activities and different cultures, different philosophies, different terminology even, and it does have to be brought together. You've mentioned the point of open data, and we'll hear much more about that from a later presenter who's, I think, core idea or love is actually open data, but I'll leave that to her. And the multilingual data spaces. And what I really also appreciate, Jochen, is your point of view from an industrial participant in the pilots. I believe it was about a third of the pilots were from the industry, just about. But it's, I think, very good to get this hands-on experience, and you're just repeating these things like coaches, consulting. That's what we had, right? Forming a team, having consulting services there, and maybe even you could be in the end a consultant to others also wanting to join the ELG. So there are so many opportunities, and it was great to hear not only from the technical but also from the organizational side and about your experience.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
With that, I'd like to switch to Arantza del Pozo from Vicomtech. Arantza is the director of the Speech and Natural Language Technologies Department at Vicomtech. She's an applied researcher. That's an applied research center, sorry, specialized in AI and interaction. Arantza's background is a PhD in speech and language technologies from the University of Cambridge. She has joined Vicomtech in 2008 as a principal investigator and leads currently a team of about 20 people specialized in the research, development, and transfer of speech and language technologies to the industry. She's coordinated more than 35 research projects and contracts, both at regional and national and European levels, and participates as a researcher in more than 100 others. So she's a very busy lady. She has a patent and a long list of publications and in journals and in conferences in the field of speech and language. And with this, Arantza, I'd like to give the word to you, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Gerhard. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you also for inviting us to participate in this panel. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Vicomtech and our department, the Speech and Natural Language Technologies department, and what we do. Then I will speak about the main needs or the main gaps that we have in our day-to-day work, so in our projects. And finally, I will also speak about how we see our relation and view of the ELG. So if you can put the next slide, please. So Vicomtech is an applied research center and is specialized in artificial intelligence, visual computing, and interaction. We are located in the scientific part of San Sebastian in the Basque Country in the north of Spain. Next, please. And basically, we do applied research in digital technologies. So our role in the market is to transfer technology, to accelerate the transference of technology from the basic research world that is usually carried out in universities and more basic research centers, and that doesn't have a dependency with the market, to the industry, to the companies, to the market needs, to the market demand, okay? So we are somewhere in the middle between the basic research world and the industrial world. And our day-to-day is participate in R&D projects, and we basically participate in two different kinds of projects. Projects in which, more basic research projects in which we collaborate with other universities and other academic partners in order to explore and develop technology. And then other projects with companies, with industry that usually subcontract us in order to adapt the existing technology, the existing state of the art in speech and natural language technologies in our case, to their particular needs. So we are very close to many companies, especially we mainly work locally and nationally. We also have some collaborations at European level, but most of the European collaborations are more based in basic research. But we are very close to the local companies, so to the local industry and to the national industry, and what the real needs of these companies are related to speech and natural language technologies. Next, please. Our team, we are currently a team of around 180 people, and we are very specialized. Around 40% of our staff has PhDs in artificial intelligence, and we are also quite international, so around 50% of our staff comes from other countries. Next, please. And basically, we apply our technologies to these 5 different fields of application. So first of all, we have a focus in all the manufacturing and industrial world. So basically, all the factories that produce different components, etc., etc. We try to address their technological needs in artificial intelligence, and part of their needs are linked to speech and natural language technologies. Then we also target the smart mobility market, which so far has been very, very focused more in computer vision technologies, but they are also requesting for speech and natural language technologies. Then we also work for the e-health and medical market. Here as well, there is a big boom linked to big data applications and exploiting health data, and a big part of that health data is language, is natural language, codified in spoken sessions with doctors, or even electronic health records, which have a lot of information that can be exploited in that market. We also work or target the digital security market. So not only analyzing data to identify, for example, cybersecurity attacks, but also all the dark web, all the information related to terrorism, trafficking, etc., which sometimes and very often also involves a lot of speech and language data that has to be processed, analyzed, etc., etc. And finally, we also target the ICT and media sector. Here there are lots of needs linked to language technologies as well, especially all the multilinguality linked to speech transcription, translation, etc., of audiovisual contents mainly. Next, please. We specialize in our department, we specialize in these 4 research lines. So the first research line is linked to speech processing technologies. And here we basically develop technology for speech recognition, speech synthesis, biometric technology, and anti-spoofing technology, which is just the opposite. So using synthesized speech in order to try to fake the biometric systems. And then emotion recognition or any other type of analysis of audio signals, extracting other kinds of information from the audio signals, such as emotion or language or gender, things like that. Then we also have the second research line is linked to natural language processing. So here we develop technology to exploit text mainly. And we usually work in information extraction technology, so extracting entities that are relevant to the different domains, to particular domains, also analyzing the sentiment and opinion or the tone of the text, if it's positive, if it's negative, if it's hate speech or not. And then we are also working on question answering. Because it's something that is demanded by the companies as the next step of information search. So try to make a question to a bunch of documents and try to get the specific answer to those documents. Also, we work on text summarization, so try to extract very relevant information from big reports in order to extract the most relevant information. We all know that we live in a busy world and that people want to get only the highlights of the information, so we are working on that as well. Then we have another research line devoted to machine translation. Here, traditionally, we have worked on text translation, and all the technology required to exploit the data necessary to train these kind of systems. And currently, we are also starting to work on speech translation. So translating directly from speech to text and even from speech to speech. And as a particular use case of monolingual machine translation, we are also working in text simplification and on measuring the quality of the translations. And finally, we have the last research line in which we work, which is the dialogue systems research line, which is linked to chatbots and conversational assistants. And here we mainly work on natural language understanding, so trying to understand the intents of the users, what the users are requesting, dialogue management, so deciding what answer to give depending on what the user has said, natural language generation, how to generate that answer in natural language. And finally, we are also working in some more exploratory projects in adding other kinds of information to that interaction, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, or touching screens and things like that. Next, please. So basically in our day-to-day is to participate in research and development projects, but what we try to do is we try to incorporate the advances that we do in these research projects into some specialized libraries that basically we keep developing incrementally. So if in one project we develop a new functionality for speech transcription, for example, we include that functionality into our transcription library, which would be Transcript. So here you can see some of those more relevant libraries that we have. Transcript is for speech translation, Vicomtech for speech synthesis, Itsuli for machine translation, DeepT for natural language processing using word embeddings and multilingual pre-trained language models, UMLS Mapper, which is very tailored to the health domain, and the UMLS Metathesaurus, and Adilib, which is our library to develop the chatbots and assistants. Next, please. So as you can see, we use language technologies on a daily basis. Most of our libraries are based on technology that has been developed in the basic research world. So we do not re-implement tools. So if there is a tool that a particular research group has developed and works very well, we use that. But then we develop another set of building blocks on top of this technology in order to facilitate the training of models, the the adaptation of the models, the integration into different products of our clients. So we have another layer within our libraries that is the one that we develop, but the core technology is technology that comes from the basic research world, and that technology evolves through time, because technology, especially in this field, is changing very, very quickly. So if we see that there is a better library, a better technology that is available, we actually modify that technology, and we keep developing our libraries also in that regard. But basically, the main gap or the main difficulty that we find in our day-to-day work is that most of our clients, they require adaptation. So they require us to adapt the existing technology to their specific domains, to their specific use case, and sometimes also to their specific languages. Here in the Basque Country, we work with Basque language, and also at national level, there are two other co-official languages, which are Catalan and Galician. So many companies want to develop products taking into account these languages as well. So the main gap that we find in our day-to-day work is that there are not enough language resources sometimes in those languages that are required to adapt the technology to the particular needs of each of our clients. So many of our projects include that language resource development steps, or getting real data from the clients, annotating the data, and making it so processing it so that we can adapt the technology using that data. So that's one of the main gaps that we see, and that we think that the ELG can help us address that gap, actually, right? So because it is a very expensive task to get language data, to annotate it. So if we can all collectively do an effort to all the work that we do, and of course here there is also a legal aspect that you were mentioning before. Some of the data from our clients cannot be shared, or maybe we need some legal advice to try to convince our clients that sharing data is good for them, because then they will be able to get access to better technology. But that's like the main gap that we are seeing at the moment in our day-to-day work. Next, please. And finally, how do we see our relation with the ELG, and what is our view of the ELG? Well, we think the ELG, it's a very good platform to gain visibility for ourselves, and to gain also access to language resources that already exist, that have been developed in different countries within different research projects. So similar to what we do in our day-to-day, there are other universities, other companies, other research centers that do similar kind of work. So trying to share all that information and put everything in one place is really useful, and also to get access to other actors in the European language technology community to collaborate in projects, etc., etc. How do we see we can collaborate with the ELG project? Uploading corpora and tools that we can share. This is what I was mentioning before. Many of the data that we get from our clients, some of the legal contracts that we have with them only allow us to use it for their projects, for their specific task, but we always try to get more access to that data, but it is not always possible. So if we can collectively create that impulse or that wave, so that the end companies can understand that sharing data is important for them, and that they will benefit in the long term, I think that's something that we can also do collaboratively. And then we also think that in some of the projects, we can use the resources, the tools, and the contacts that the ELG provides to improve our work and to be able to provide better technology to our final clients. And finally, just a point that I think it is important to take into account in the ELG. So the ELG currently has a lot of great technology for many languages, but I think the challenge here is how do we transfer this technology to industry? How do we make this technology get the companies use it in their products, so I think for that would be like the last step of the success for the ELG. I think for that purpose, it is very, very important to get the involvement, to create a community of local companies in the LT value chain. We worked a lot with local companies and national companies, and we see that they provide services that big multilingual companies such as Google or Microsoft or IBM do not provide. So domain adaptation, integration, specific integrations to the needs of their clients, they are very well positioned usually locally, both in public administration but also in the private sector. So getting these companies, these LT companies involved in the ELG, I think it's something that will be very good to make this a real success, and to make sure that the technology, the great technology that is already in the ELG, gets the market. And that was all that I had prepared so far for today.
Thank you very, very much, Arantza. A very impressive portfolio of areas and activities that you're active in. We get even the fields that you mentioned, manufacturing, mobility, health. I could have added maybe finance as well as one of those sectors where language and speech play a role, and multilingual. And there's a lot of money to be made if you deploy it in the right way. Also, your mentioning of the metaverse. Because eventually, how will those wonderful ideas that we're having here play out in a world that's dominated by augmented reality, maybe soon, and by the large platform providers? And this transfer of how getting things to the industry, we always say here in a way how to get the horsepowers of the engine that you have in your car onto the road. Because even in the car race, if you have the engine with the most horsepowers, you may not win. You have to actually get the horsepowers onto the road. And I think I interpret what you said, how to transfer it to the industry, and your experience with this as well, I think could also be very valuable pieces in how we do innovation in the ELG, because innovation is not only inventing things, it's actually applying them as well. It needs both parts. And this experience that you have and this expertise that you're bringing in could be extremely valuable. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
With this, I'd like to switch to a slightly different end user application. It's the city of Vienna. I recently met Brigitte Lutz at a different event and realized that she might also be a very good fit here. It's not the industry, but it's public services, but they also play a role both in contributing data, maybe contributing speech or language data as well, using language data. It was either her or a colleague of hers that really got a lot of laughs by saying the city of Vienna has trash cans, garbage bins distributed all over the city, obviously. And would it be possible maybe to talk to those garbage bins anytime soon? Of course, the smell would need to be a little bit different, because I don't think you would be wanting to talk to something that smells like garbage. But anyway, just the idea I found very, very amusing. And coming from Vienna, I should maybe also say that we're a very multilingual, multicultural city. Quite a substantial part of the population was not born in Vienna. Quite a substantial part of the population uses languages other than German at home, especially so in school, younger kids, you can hear it on the street. So Vienna is a multilingual environment very quickly when you want to talk to most of the population. We're seeing this now, I think, also with campaigns concerning vaccination. So with this, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Brigitte Lutz. She's the Data Governance Coordinator of the City of Vienna. She's responsible for data and digital strategy, and she also firms as the Open Data Queen. She will tell you more about that, I guess. She's a founding member of the Corporation of Open Government Data Austria and the Vice President of the Data Intelligence Offensive Austria. And with this, I didn't see her before. I hope she's here now. I'd like to hand over the floor.
I'm here. Do you see me? Do you hear me?
Yes, you're there.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. First, I want to give some facts about the city of Vienna. It's capital of Austria. It's one of the 9 federal states of Austria, and I'm very proud that yesterday city of Vienna earned as the first city worldwide the IEEE Artificial Intelligence Ethics certification mark. So this is a commitment to our digital humanism strategy, and I think it fits to the whole theme of data innovation and services. Today I want to speak about data, about open data, and I want to present our service chatbot, the Vienna bot. So let's go forward, please. As I often say, open data are borderless. When you read this picture from the right side, in Austria, we have the cooperation Open Government Data Austria, where all the federal countries, the ministries, cities are together, and you can find the metadata of all the open data of Austria on our national data portal data.gv.at, and the European data portal harvests all metadata of 36 countries in Europe, and it's multilingual. There we have the translation of the metadata in more than 25 languages. And we have a nice cooperation in the German-speaking country, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein since 10 years, where we speak about a lot of themes. And I think the next themes would be to speak about data for language processing, because I think it's a nice theme. Let's go forward, please. The city of Vienna is an open data pioneer in the German-speaking countries. In 2011, we were the first city who published open data. We publish new data sets since May 2011 in quarterly data phases, and now we have the 45th data phase with new data. We have published more than 500 data sets that are geodata, statistical data, real-time data, and where we are very proud, over 300 applications were built with this open data Vienna, the apps and visualization and whatever you think about. And 2019, we have published our data excellence strategy with our leading principle, open by default. Now we have our Jubilee year, 10 years of open data, and we are aiming to build a digital twin of the city of Vienna, which it's a network of all the data we have in our portfolio. Who needs open data? Next slide, please. Everybody needs open data, as I think about. Would you please make the full picture? So society, science, economy, and administration need open data because, for example, in science, it's a nice database for research projects. In economy, there are a lot of new business areas with the help of open data. And in our administration ourselves, we use open data, for example, for one of our favorite applications, the WienBot. The next slide, please. As a smart city, our goal is to make people's lives better and above all easier. And one example for an application is our WienBot, a voice assistant for Vienna. And with the help of natural language, AI and direct answers, we make information more accessible to everyone. The English version is translated automatically and in real time with the help of artificial intelligence. We made the quality control together with our colleagues in the translation service, but we are always happy about feedback. So maybe you will try the WienBot afterwards if you're in Vienna. How does the WienBot work? The next slide, I have an example. It works with voice input. For example, when you ask a question, I need a new password. The WienBot is quite funny. He says, why do you want to get away from the most liberal city in the world? And afterwards, you get the information, straight information about where you can get the new password. Citizens want more than just information. They want short and simple answers from our side. So one answer has a maximum of 5 sentences. Next slide, please. The natural language with voice input will learn to speak in whole sentences again. And that means that we leave searches with keywords behind us. So this is a field where artificial intelligence comes in, and much more information from our side can be transported in one sentence. And here you see not only whole sentences are built, you also see that, for example, real-time data is used for routing information with the underground. The next slide, we see how, with the help of artificial intelligence as machine learning, the sentences are analyzed. Intention as well as the relevant information are automatically recognized. For the example, how do I get from Stephansplatz to Karlsplatz? So the departure and the destination here, and the transport mode is public transport, and the departure time we know. So those are all the information for a routing request, and this makes it possible to fill forms and APIs for us. So we are freeing ourselves from this formula thinking in this way. The next slide, I have the example again with real-time data. The Wienbot displays departure times of nearby, for example, underground stations, and you can ask for metro, bus, tram, or specific lines. We also use geodata. The next example, for example, where can I park my bicycle? It shows the location of the nearest bicycle parking facilities. We have all the geo information from the city of Vienna, which is also open data, for example, playgrounds, parks, toilets, dog areas, just to name a few. And it's like a voice controlled map, and for Vienna, better than Google Maps, because it's a free map and nothing is traced when you use this data. So what could be, the next slide, please, the further steps in cooperation of language technologies and open data? We are always open to connect and cooperate because we are fans of cooperation. Maybe it would be possible to open up training data. What would be the first step from my side would be to build this network between the networks between your network and our data network and the communities. We could build it on European, national, and local level. And when we meet again in the cooperation open data with Germany, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein, I'm sure this theme of language technologies and language data will be the next theme we want to speak about it. Thank you again, Gerhard, for the invitation. I think there is a big future we can build together. And if you want to meet us, you can try out our Wienbot. You can reach me with my email address, and further information you find on our website, Digitales Wien.
Thank you, Brigitte, and thank you very much. And I'd like everybody else also to know that we only recently met, and I'm very, very grateful for Brigitte's flexible reaction to me asking her to be on this session today. We only met last week. I was impressed by a presentation they gave. I thought, wait a minute, the public sector as somebody providing data sets, maybe even local data sets. Arantza mentioned that, adaptation, fine-tuning, data sets, the scarcity, that might be something where the public sector could contribute, but also use it in the real world. We're talking about getting the PS, getting the horsepowers onto the floor, onto the road, using real-time open data, using natural language processing to interact with a lot of services. I'm really impressed. Thank you very much. And I think I can also already offer, in case you're meeting in the DACH region for open data and open data sets, that the ELG or representatives of the ELG will be more than happy to return the favor that you have given us and help maybe give a presentation there, maybe also introduce the ELG to this data group that you're working at. So thank you. very, very much again.
Thank you very much. Have fun.
Okay,
And,
thanks. And with
bye-bye.
this, thank you. With this, we have 13 minutes in the session. So I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm actually glad that Gregor is not here today because it gives everybody else a chance to really explain what they're doing. Also gives Svetla hopefully enough time to finish. I will hand over the floor to her. Svetla, just introduce her briefly. She's a senior research lead at Sirma AI. Sirma AI trades as Ontotext. And with that brief introduction, I'd like to hand over the floor to our last presentation in the session today, to Svetla.
Thank you for inviting me to present our activities related to the language technologies and language resources at Sirma AI Ontotext. Next slide, please. Sirma AI trading as Ontotext is a leader in semantic technologies. We're famous with our main products, GraphDB, which is RDF triple store, and Ontotext platform that gives an opportunity to organize your information and documents into enterprise knowledge graphs. And on the top of that, it allows to customize and apply different types of machine learning analytics and text analytics to link documents to knowledge graphs. We're working mainly with data sets which are both structured and unstructured. We're processing textual information, videos, audio information, images, etc. And we transform all this data into knowledge graph, and on the top of them, we use different ontologies and standard classifications, and we also benefit with integration with different linked open data sets. We're working in a variety of sectors, life science and healthcare. Here we process a lot of clinical documents, clinical trials, also electronic health records. We have currently active 2 projects, Horizon 2020 project Axamode, and we're a solution provider for AI for AU with solution for classifying oncology diseases in Spanish. We are also processing a lot of textual documents and informations on the top of which we use ontologies for food and agriculture with some data which are coming for certification of food products. This is the Food Safety Market Horizon 2020 project, which we are currently working on. In the financial services, we're processing a lot of information and documents related to company activities. We have currently Innovate project, which is trying to provide valuable information for the innovation ratings for startups and SMEs. Another application is media, which is currently one of the trends of processing of disinformation and tracking the fake news in social media and in other types of media. We have We Verify project in this area. For transport and logistics, we're processing data for events for the supply chain from door to door to process information and tracking information for different delivery services. And we're also working in the domain of manufacturing, automotive, energy, building automation, infrastructure, and aerospace. Next slide, please. For all these domains, we're using and developing a variety of technologies. The core language technologies which we're using, obviously, for processing unstructured data is information extraction, name entity recognition, and relation extraction. Using different languages, we need also a lot of tools and services for machine translation. In order this information to be integrated, we need also a concept normalization to different standard classification and ontologies. That's why we're also working with text-based classification. For many applications, we use also text summarization, natural language generation, both from knowledge graphs and from raw text, and question answering on the top of the information integrated on the knowledge graphs. And text annotation is a crucial part in our work because we need to develop a lot of resources in order to be able to process the data provided both by our customers and by different data sets which we're dealing with on our research. And we use different technologies, mainly our core products are based on semantic technologies, but in the accelerating development of language technologies for the main NLP problems, we're currently using a lot of deep learning language transformers, both pre-trained language models and fine-tuned language models for our custom needs for different domains. Rule-based natural language processing is not yet it is still used in our daily work because a lot of our customers require a specific development of and customization of data processing, which requires a lot of additional work on the top of the well-developed pipelines for text processing. And we are also working on automation, curation, and evaluation tools for annotation and knowledge graphs verbalization, multilingual pipelines based on machine translation, and etc. Next slide, please. In our daily work, we identified the following gaps and challenges. The common gap is the availability of multilingual resources like ontologies, like data sets, like benchmark data sets are missing for the majority of the domains, and especially multilingual benchmark data sets, which will allow us to see and to identify how we can improve our language technologies. Also, there is a non-clear annotation guidelines and the quality of annotations for the many of the document corpora. We need also a clear and more innovative rules for update and automation of gazetteers, which we're using for information extractions. There are a lot of constraints also for the newly developed deep learning technologies, like for embeddings, for the vector space models, extensions, and the main data which we're using are ontologies. And again, here is a huge cross-ontology ambiguity and lack of standardized domain ontologies. Next slide, please. For the language technologies we are seeing as a challenge verification workflows and multimodal knowledge graphs, which will allow to combine information from different types of media, from text, from images, from audio, video, which are currently the trend. And the verification is currently used mainly for life science domain, but it's highly desired to be applicable also for the other sectors. Also, the scalability of rule-based name entity recognition and relation extraction is under question. And for annotation, curation, and evaluation tools, there is a need for generic workflow for evaluation and training, and a need for a lot of tools for active learning. Next slide, please. The desired features and tools in our portfolio is to be able to integrate and interplay of different natural language processing approaches and technologies via our product Ontotext platform. Due to the acceleration of the development of language technologies and rapid change in the current state-of-the-art language technologies, it's highly desirable to be able to benefit using such technologies by out-of-the-box application of generic information extraction for particular use cases, and to be able to package technological offering for applications of natural language processing tasks. And a huge gap is the standardized workflows to facilitate the tasks for active learning, machine learning, evaluation, and retraining and development of relevant tooling, which are computationally expensive and require a lot of time and efforts. Next slide, please. Currently, we're working on a lot of European projects. Here mentioned three of them. HENSOLDT, which is a project in the domain of life science and healthcare. We're processing information in English, Italian, and Dutch, trying to extract information and relations from clinical documents. We developed also an ontology, which is dealing with data related to colon cancer, lung cancer, cervix cancer, etc., and is a specific ontology for histopathological point of view. We're also dealing with a lot of standard classifications and ontologies like SNOMED, and ICD-10. We're developing beyond state-of-the-art tools based on deep learning language transformers, and we're using a lot of innovative technologies for modeling multimodal knowledge graphs. The information which we're processing in our solution classifying oncology diseases in Spanish, which is a solution to AI for EU project, is for Spanish language. Again, we're using similar technologies like XML. And in WeVerify project, you can see on the right-hand side some of the languages. Most of the European languages are covered for content search and enrichment. This project is mainly focused for fact-checking and for processing this information. Again, here I used machine translation to tackle with the information in the different media sources, information extraction, and of course multimodal knowledge graphs are again really important because a lot of media information is delivered in different formats, in textual format, audio, video, and images. We're currently, next slide please, working on the sister project of European Language Grid. This is European Language Equality project, which is a really ambitious project, which aims to define the roadmap and strategic agenda for the language technologies until 2030. Our current activities are focused on work package 2 to define the gaps in language technologies and language resources, to make a deep dive and to identify what are the needs in this area. Next slide, please. And regarding the European Language Grid, which gives a lot of opportunities for networking and communications and developing communities in the language technology research and industrial organizations in Europe. This is a huge benefit for all of the participants. Also, it provides an access to the European Language Grid platform, which is a very nice platform, which allows to explore different resources, data collections, language models, corpora, tools, and components. And it gives a lot of opportunities for dissemination and communication about the latest development in the area of the language technologies. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Svetla. We're getting short in time. Katrin reminded me, I'd still like to repeat that you mentioned this, it was mentioned before, the connection to the whole set of semantic technologies. Natural language processing, language technologies do not exist in isolation. They're very intricately linked to semantic technologies, to AI. They may be at the core of AI. And also maybe this lack of standard evaluation in sets and possibilities in such a highly oversold domain as natural language processing and AI is today. Everything is AI. I think that could be very helpful for getting this out with realistic expectations into the real world. And also your point with the community, and we were laughing the other day a little bit also because eventually LT, language technologies, if we're looking at it from a community angle, it's maybe something like a language Tinder. Maybe it's also language Tinder, where in the community relationships are found that turn out to be long-term relationships and not only very brief ones. So with this, I'd like to thank all of the participants very, very much for your contributions, all of the attendants for your interest in this session. I believe we still do have time for one poll, and I'll hand over to Katrin for that. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Oh, the poll. Yeah.
Right, and while you're all filling in the poll, it's one click, please do it. I'd like to thank Gerhard once again, Gerhard Backfried from HENSOLDT Analytics, and all the different speakers of this session for their great contributions. Thanks very much. Partially on short notice, much appreciated. Okay, the poll is completed, I think. Okay. 20% industry. Looks like industry is busy doing industry projects right now, not participating in online conferences, which is absolutely understandable. Right. So thanks again to all the different colleagues from the previous session. Greetings, and we will reconvene. We will take 12 minutes now, short break, stretch your legs, grab a cup of coffee, and we will reconvene in 12 minutes and 10:30. Our time here, 10:30. For the language-centric AI in Europe session with 6 different projects presenting themselves. Thanks very much. See you in about 10 minutes.